Welcome back in, everybody, to Tide Talk Live, now on the Believe Network. Stacey Blackwood, joined as always by my good buddy, Jake Thomas. Jake, we're recording this on a Thursday night. It's been a few days since the college football playoff rankings have been released. It's been a few days since Alabama won the SEC championship. We're going to talk about that on today's show, along with some transfer portal news as well. But first of all, Jake, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing great, buddy. It's been a good week. I'm still celebrating that win from Saturday, and still love seeing the Florida State and Georgia tears. So it's been great, and just having Alabama turn college football upside down again. It's just been great. So great to be an Alabama fan for sure.
Yeah, it kind of feels like all is right in the world because the entire nation hates Alabama once again. So
Yep.
all is right in the world of college football, and we are definitely here for that here at Tide Talk Live. And like I mentioned in the opening, we are now on the Believe Network for the podcast form. So proud to be a part of that network again. And they got some great things going over there, and we're excited to be teaming up with those guys as well. If you're not already, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us on Apple Podcast. Just wherever you find great podcasts, you can find our podcast there. And we would appreciate a subscription, a 5-star review, just whatever you can do to help our show out. We would greatly appreciate that. And Jake, I mentioned that we're going to talk about, we're going to wrap up, I guess, the SEC championship. We'll talk some college football playoff, and we'll finish the show up with some transfer portal news. And I do want to touch on the SEC championship game because I think what kind of gets lost in this madness of a weekend, the day after championship Saturday, Jake, the college football playoff rankings are released, and you don't really have time to reflect or enjoy the win. And Jake,
Right.
that win against Georgia was a big time win for Alabama. I mean, they took down Georgia, who's won back-to-back national titles. They were on a 29-game winning streak, and I just think that we've kind of swept that under the rug because Alabama got that berth in the playoffs. So I do want to spend a few minutes just kind of reflecting on that game, Jake. What stood out to you most about that? Kind of what you're taking away from that big win from Alabama most?
You know, it's always easy to say that trench warfare is how you win and lose games, honestly, but Alabama dominated the trenches in that game and on both sides of the ball. I mean, the offensive line, we've talked about it at nauseum, Stacey, on the improvement of the offensive line as the season's progressed. Caden Proctor, Tyler Booker, Seth McLaughlin, Jaden Roberts, and J.C. Latham, they showed up in a big way for us Saturday, and they dominated that game from the start. Now, defensive line, outside of the scripted first series for Georgia, Alabama finally hunkered in and played lights out. And I remember on that third down play, Georgia had to call a timeout because they couldn't get guys set, and then they come back out, and I saw a different view of what it was on the field. But on that third down play where they did a sweep out to the left, Caleb Downs, man, just absolutely blew that play up. I mean, we've got something special right there, and he's he's a true true freshman. I mean, he's going to be a sophomore next year. He's going to be there at least 2 more years, and this kid's already, I mean, cementing his legacy as an Alabama safety. I mean, he's outstanding, man.
Yeah, I think you do have to start with up front because I thought Alabama would be able to get their own and handle their own against Georgia. But like you mentioned, Jake, especially the Alabama offensive line, they just whipped Georgia's defensive front.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't every play, but for the large majority of that game, Jake, those big guys up front just completely dominated the Georgia defensive front. And that was the difference in the game because Alabama was able to run the football when they wanted to run the football.
Right.
And Georgia could not do that when they had the ball. And that was the story of the game because what that allowed Alabama to do is to set up play action, which they love to do, but it also allowed for late in the game for Milroe to be more of a threat in the running game because they were having to worry about Rodell Williams, Kendrick Law in motion, Isaiah Bond in motion, and it just the way those guys kind of moved the line of scrimmage was critical in this game. And obviously Jalen Milroe won the MVP and rightfully so because of his heroic performance there late in the fourth quarter. But for 60 minutes, Jake, this offensive line controlled the line of scrimmage and really won the game for Alabama.
Yeah, absolutely, Stacey. And if you could give the MVP award to a whole unit, it would be definitely the offensive line for sure. They from the get go, it wasn't perfect every play, but for the majority of the game, it was exactly what we needed, and they showed up big time. And I just feel like this is how it's going to be for the rest of the season and to the playoffs. This offensive line is going to dominate in the trenches.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's the key for Alabama. Look, Jalen Milroe is obviously important because when you get in the Final Four, your quarterback better play well. But I just think if this offensive line does their job, this Alabama team can win the national championship. So I know that's a lot on those five guys, but I have faith in those guys, and the way they played against Georgia and that stout defensive front just gave me that much more confidence in what they're going to be able to do in the playoff.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'm excited. I'm on record saying that this is probably one of my favorite teams under Saban, just for the growth that we've seen throughout the season with this team. And it was shaky at first, but they've come on and they've started gelled as a team. They've grown as a team, and they've grown on me because at the South Florida game, man, I was like, man, what are we doing? But now I'm like, we have a chance to win a national championship with. I mean, I feel like a young team, honestly.
Yeah, I
And,
mean it is.
and so that just think, it's a young team. And if Milroe comes back next year with another year of experience and with all the playmakers coming back, this team is just going to be that much better next year. But we got to finish the job this year.
Yeah, there's still work to be done this year. And Jake, I think that kind of with how it does seem like a long season going all the way back to South Florida till now. But think of how quick all this has happened for Jalen Milroe. He literally went from zero to hero for this Alabama football team, from week 3 up until the SEC championship game, Jake. And now I think this break is almost good for Milroe in the essence that he can kind of, refocus, reestablish himself. And Jake, this guy still has so much to improve on.
Right.
And I'm not even knocking the guy. I'm just saying that this guy has so much untapped potential that this time off is going to be nothing but benefit him so he can go back, watch some film, learn from his mistakes, and just get better. And you often see, excuse me, a lot of these guys make big jumps in the bowl prep.
Right.
And I think Milroe is a guy who could make a tremendous improvement from what we've seen on this last Saturday against Georgia to what we might see on January 1st against Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Jalen Milroe's growth has been, huge for this team this year, and I will also say Tommy Grease and his growth. He had some learning curves early on, and then when we finally set on Milroe being the guy, he was able to rework that playbook. Not push everything onto Jalen starting out, just spoon feed him just a little bit to get him acclimated to the offense and what the style of play we want to run with Milroe. And then we started seeing the QB powers, the QB sweep, stuff like that, which opened up a new level to this Alabama offense.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And like you said, you just can't just see the evolution really of this Alabama offense. And it all starts with what we've talked about mostly in this episode, the offensive line
Right.
and Jalen Milroe. And if those two, if that offensive line continue to get better and Jalen Milroe continues to get better, those playmakers around them are just going to, their play is just going to be elevated because of that. So really looking forward to seeing what Tommy Reese and this offense can do, with this, 3.5 week period to kind of prep and get ready for Michigan in that semifinal matchup at the Rose Bowl. Which, Jake, that kind of brings us to our next topic. Just, I don't really want to spend a lot of time on this because there's so much time between now and kickoff between Alabama and Michigan. But just your early thoughts on this matchup, Jake. What do you know about this Michigan team? What are you kind of expecting, on the surface for the Rose Bowl matchup?
Man, Michigan, they've had a great year, and Blake Corum's one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. He's so small and he can get behind those big offensive linemen, and he kind of gets lost back there, and then they open up a huge hole and he's gone. So we're gonna have to keen on him and keep an eye on him to not let him break free for a big gain. I think our big boys in the defensive line we talked about can handle the offensive line of Michigan. I don't think they have played an defensive line like we have at any point this year. If you remember in that Penn State game, their two edge rushers got after McCarthy a lot, and Dallas Turner and Braswell should feast in this game. So hopefully everything goes as planned and goes that way. I just feel like it's a bad matchup for Michigan, and I'm not saying that to be a homer, but I just feel like it's a bad matchup because you could tell they wanted Florida State, and they grown. So Alabama, I think, is the more talented team here on paper for sure.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I guess I haven't really dove into the matchup too much. I will say this. You mentioned running back Blake Corum. I mean, he has over 1,000 yards rushing and 24 rushing touchdowns on the season, which is an incredible number.
It is.
And like you said, he's not the biggest guy, but he gets the job done. And you mentioned Penn State was able to get pressure on J.J. McCarthy in that matchup. Michigan's also lost an offensive tackle since that. They lost one against Ohio State. So I'm with you, Jake. I think Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell could really make an impact on this game.
Mm-hmm.
And one other crazy Michigan stat. Since October 21st, J.J. McCarthy has just one passing touchdown.
Oh, wow.
Is that not insane?
That is wild. I did not know that.
He attempted 8 passes against Penn State.
Wow.
So I think what the key to this game, Jake, is going to be Alabama's front seven. They just got to stop the run.
Right.
And Jake, I think on the surface that seems like an easy order, but we said the same thing about stopping Auburn's run, and Alabama just allowed them to run all over them. Now I will say this: Auburn does their running scheme totally different than what Michigan does. Michigan is downhill.
Right.
Auburn, Auburn likes to stretch you out, get to the edges, get to the perimeter. That's not what Michigan does. Michigan is, run it straight at you and try to bully you.
Yep.
I'm not sure they want to get in a 12-round heavyweight bout with Alabama.
No.
So that on the surface, like you said, Alabama just seems to be a very bad matchup for Michigan, and we'll talk more about that matchup, leading up to the contest. But I think there's one psychological thing going into this game, Jake, for Alabama that I don't want to say it worries me, but it's something that I'm considering. What has been the bar for college football the last 2 seasons? It's been Georgia.
Yeah.
Alabama has not wanted anything more since they lost in the 2021 national championship game than to beat Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
They get that done last Saturday in the SEC championship game. So it's not even a concern. The concern is an overstatement. My only slight worry is that they won't take Michigan serious because Georgia has been the standard.
Right.
So I don't think they're going to do that because I think this team has the right mindset. I think they have great leadership. I think they're about the right stuff. I think they're a great team. I think they play with great discipline. I think they play with great camaraderie. I think they complement each other, whether it's offense or defense. So I think they have all the right stuff and they have the right mental makeup. But I do think that's important to note that, Alabama's wanted to beat Georgia for 2 years. That's been their goal. Now that they have crossed that goal and completed, kind of checked that off the list, can they, refocus on what's next? And I think they can. I just think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, I agree, Stacey. I see the concern there for sure. The players played their hearts out in that Georgia game. Good thing that the next game ain't next weekend because I would be concerned. But give them some time off. Get the coaches get time with the players and say, hey, let's refocus. We got one hurdle past us, and that was Georgia. Now let's get our next one. That's a national championship. And I feel like that's Saban's end goal regardless of anything, is to win a national championship. That's the standard that he has set down there since he's been there at Alabama.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. All right, we're fixing to wrap up the show, but want to touch on one more quick topic, Jake. The transfer portal is just completely bonkers right now, and fortunately for Alabama, with a playoff run on the horizon, the portal hasn't been that busy for Alabama as far as Alabama players entering the portal, but there has been a few. Just want to briefly touch on those. Of course, Tyler Buckner, the quarterback who just transferred from Notre Dame to Alabama this season, is in the portal, Jake. But oddly enough, he's not going to be playing football. He is looking to play lacrosse, where he was apparently one of the best high school prospects coming out of high school a few years back. So that is certainly interesting. And look, I know Alabama fans have a certain opinion on Tyler Buckner, but I would suggest cut the kid some slack. He was put in an impossible situation, to be honest with you. So, wish nothing but the best for Tyler Buckner. Ty Jones-Bell is in the portal as well, a former 4-star receiver from the class of 2020. He sat out this season due to medical reasons and took a red shirt. So be interesting to see where he kind of ends up for his final season of college eligibility next year. Then, two guys that one's not surprising and one is, not too terribly surprising, but, Isaiah Hastings, the 4-star defensive lineman from the class of 2022, he entered the portal today as well. I'm sure he'll have plenty of suitors, at 6'4", 290, a good interior defensive lineman there. So I expect he'll have plenty of suitors, but I guess the guy who's going to hurt the most to say goodbye to is Ja'Cory Brooks, Jake, a guy who's, made an impact on the Alabama team since his true freshman season in 2021. Of course, he's going to always be remembered as the guy who made that catch in the end zone against Auburn to help tie the game and send that game into overtime where Alabama would eventually win. So kind of bittersweet for Ja'Cory Brooks saying goodbye to him because he had a good career at Alabama. This year was kind of injury riddled for him, but good player, good kid, and, wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, absolutely, Stacey. I really, really going to miss Ja'Cory Brooks, just the way he's handled himself and the years past, including this year. He didn't see the field a lot this year, like you said, with injuries, but he's a guy that we'll never forget in Alabama lore because of what he did in that Iron Bowl a few years ago. So I hope wherever he lands, he balls out and makes him some money in the NFL here in a few years.
Yeah, he's a Florida kid. It wouldn't surprise me to see him go to somewhere like Central Florida, maybe South Florida, maybe Florida. I mean, they need all the help they can get down there. Billy Napier does.
Yeah.
But one crazy side note regarding it kind of ties in with Ty Jones-Bell and Ja'Cory Brooks. There is not one receiver remaining from the class of 2020 or 2021. None of the receivers Alabama signed in those two classes are now on the Alabama team.
That's wild.
And I think what that goes to show is because the truth is none of them really panned out to what they were, projected to be.
Mm-hmm.
Ja'Cory Brooks was the closest, in my opinion.
Right.
And I think you can kind of blame that really on COVID, Jake, and the fact that coaches couldn't go see these kids in person. There was so many restrictions on how you recruited back then, and I think it really hurt this staff's ability to properly, get an evaluation on these kids. So I just thought that was an interesting note that all those guys that they signed those two recruiting classes, none of those receivers are on the team anymore.
That's a wild stat. I saw that earlier tonight, and I was like, "Wow, that is crazy." Jones-Bell is one to me that is very interesting. He stayed this long because, we ain't seen him on the field, but just a handful of times in his career, and he's held on. I guess I'm not sure if he's graduated or not yet, but maybe he's he wanted to get that graduation certificate from the Alabama and then move on. And it seems like from where you're nodding your head, that's what he did.
Yeah. That's what I'm pretty sure that's the way things played out for him. And, there'll be some guys graduating, I think next week or week after next, several guys graduating, and even Jalen Milroe's graduating here in a couple of weeks. So, there's there's a lot of interesting stuff happening. There's going to be more guys into the portal as well, even in the coming days, most likely. But I think the large portion of the Alabama players that do, in fact, enter the portal will be after the season is completed. So, but there's plenty of time to talk about that. There's plenty of time to talk about this upcoming matchup with Michigan. And we're going to be doing that here on our channel here at Tide Talk Live. So make sure you do subscribe to the channel on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and please leave us those written reviews on Apple Podcasts. That really helps grow our channel as well. Smash that like button here on YouTube and jump in the comment section and let us know your thoughts and opinions on today's show. But that is going to wrap it up. Been a lot of fun talking with you guys. Cannot wait to be back here in a couple days. So make sure you tune in, and we'll see you soon. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.